All right, let's call the work session to order. Amendment of special use permits. It's got your name on it, or do I want to get him?
My name?
It does have your name on
I
it.
will, turn it over to Josh.
I thought that might
Such a formality.
Quickly. Responsibility transferred is not.
Now that you've summed it up, you're gonna turn it over to Josh.
Whole chain of command.
Is, I guess everyone's somewhat familiar with what's being proposed here. I know you guys have had a chance to discuss it already, at least a little bit. Essentially, we're proposing an amendment to the SUPs that have been granted a few years ago for Grayland, Liberty Mills, and Berrywood at Honolulu Farm. If you recall, they all kind of accommodate similar uses: agritourism, farm-based businesses, picket, farm stands, retail markets, those kind of things. But the conditions that were placed on the SUPs were very wildly different, particularly when it came down to what specifically could be sold on site. And over the years, with some changes in state code, and particularly with some changes in our code and proposed changes to our code, there's a lot of things in here that are either permitted by right or no longer relevant. You'll see in the memo I gave in your packet, since some of the conditions have been amended over the years, you have the current conditions for each one. So I guess the purpose of this is just a discussion on where the board would like to take these.
Can you summarize the biggest impacts you see from the state code changes? As I went through this, that was the question I kept asking myself is, how much of this do we point specifically to the state code versus other things that we might want to do cleanup-wise or comparability-wise, something like that? And I didn't get a chance to go back and actually read the language, so I mean, if that's not something you can answer in 2 sentences, then I'll go do some reading, but if it is,
Well,
it seems to affect the by right category more than anything else, if I recall.
yeah, the agritourism definition from the state, which is what I've actually proposed to the board next month, you'll get that zoning amendment that we're proposing, would affect Liberty Mills more than the other two. The UPIC operations, the community-sponsored agriculture, corn maze, pumpkin patches, antique tractor displays, hay wagon rides, that all falls under agritourism. And as kind of an extension of that, when we adopted the farm enterprise definition as a by right use in ag, which picks up a lot of the other things, and that basically covers anything that you produce or make from on-site materials or on-site period and sell or provide to the public on-site, it's considered a farm enterprise. So between those two things covers most of these uses that you see in the conditions.
If they are by right, do you need a special use permit then?
You do not.
That's what I'm thinking. So if we basically realign our zoning category for agriculture to meet the state requirements, that picks up much of what we've already got in the special use permit.
Correct.
Except for the retail.
Except for the retail.
Yeah, all three of them have, to some varying degree, a combination farm stand, retail market. They would all still need special use permits for those. The other thing, the hours of operation, as I indicated in the memo, are really wildly different for each one. It's not something we really have staff ability to enforce. That's something else I wanted to bring up to the board to see if we could get some direction on how to amend that.
I guess, and I would like to see consistency unless there is a specific rationale for something different between the various locations. I mean, you know, if one is amidst a lot of commercial areas, you might be far more liberal in terms of operating hours. And if they're more close to residential areas, you do something else. But it would seem to me that consistency would be the primary objective, with deviations from that for specific conditions.
Sure.
Well, and there, I haven't found the language yet, but one of them, I think, is Grelin, has hours of operations, which are pretty tight, and then it says, except for special events. Well, then that's not the hours of operations, if you can have, because that's, I mean, he did a lot of those, on a weekly basis. I went to several of them. And they're nice events, I mean, but they don't end at whatever it is, 7 o'clock or something like that. So, I mean, I don't know how you deal with a situation like that, but it's, I mean, he doesn't have to get a permit to hold a special event, because it's provided for within the SUP
Correct.
without parameters in terms of.
Well,
hours.
that's one of the problems. The three SUPs, you know, well, I'll watch what I say, but you know, if you read over the three of them, you kind of wonder who on earth came up with that idea. And what I would like to see, quite frankly, is just simply to bring them all down, clean them all up, clean all the garbage out of every one of them. Because one of the problems is we have things in the SUPs where we're granting them a privilege in the SUP that they already have by right. But it creates confusion and a misdirection when you're addressing something. You seem to be giving somebody a right that they already have. There's no point in having that in there. So, you know, in just my discussions with the three principals and with Josh and with Brian, you know, everybody kind of agrees that they, you know, if they're just all on the same footing, that's fine. And they're not all exactly the same, but they're fairly close. And I don't see a need to really draw big distinctions between the three of them.
Well, going down that path, let's take the hours of operations. You know, we don't typically set the hours of operations for most businesses in the county. Is there a need to either, as a part of a special SUP or in the ordinance, to do it here? Especially when we waive it for a special event, whatever a special event is. And I will find the language, but
Well, we don't have a noise ordinance, so.
yeah, it says hours of operation Monday through Friday, 7 to 7, Saturday, 7 to 9, Sunday, 10 to 8, parenthetically excluding special events.
Mm-hmm. I will tell you that you know, they were all good with it. The only suggestions for changes came actually from Grelin, who would like to have the restriction on amplified music removed, and they want to go to their request was to go to a 250 maximum that they could have for weddings and that sort of thing. The hours of operation, I think we should just standardize them. I don't think it's unreasonable to have some kind of limit, because they are there are people who live nearby. So in other special use permits, we have put a limit on like garages and things like that, where they wouldn't be doing any outside work after a particular hour or whatever. So there is precedent, and it's sort of a common practice. But I don't, there again, I don't see a need to make it terribly complicated, like different hours of operation here and there, and Saturday and Sunday, and
Well, that's what struck me, was we had it sort of boxed in, very complicated, and then we waived it for the one that matters.
And some of that was a result of the different things that the different people wanted to do.
it was also the result of, I think, what
opposition you had.
Yes, what opposition you had, and maybe what you thought opposition you might have, and what do we need to do to get this passed, and those kinds of things.
So something along the lines of not before 7, not after 9.
Probably a little later than 9.
Well, see, that was the part
Well,
that caught.
but I mean, as a general.
Yeah. I think
Couple
7 to,
things.
I think probably 7 to 11 would be a reasonable.
Yeah, but, I mean, that's what you're talking about.
7A to 11P.
Yeah,
Well, and then you don't need to cover special events, because I think you
Yeah,
just you
because
fit it
that
within that
covers,
window.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest, the way we categorize special uses already, if we don't give them specific permission in the SUP, they can come get an event permit, between 7 AM and 10 PM, Sunday through Thursday, 7 AM and midnight, Friday and Saturday. Those are the hours in the ordinance. So I was gonna say, if we wanted to streamline those, I would suggest using those hours.
Say that again.
7 AM to 10 PM, Sunday through Thursday, and 7 AM to midnight, Friday and Saturday.
As the standard hours of operation.
Would you put that in the ordinance so that that in and of itself didn't trigger an SUP?
Well, I would go ahead, just my suggestion at this point is to add that to the 3 SUPs.
Where did that come from, Josh?
It's in the ag zoning, it's section 70-309.
So it's already in the, okay.
The only catch there is, in order to actually have a special event, you have to come get a special event permit. Unless we specifically create a condition in the SUP that says you can hold special events.
Which one of them does.
Yeah, one of them does, the other 2 don't address it.
Yeah. And in my opinion, it doesn't make a lot of sense at this point to have them having to go to planning and zoning every week or every month or every 2 months and get this permit. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. That's what they're doing.
yeah, well, if you had to do it for Dan, he'd be there every Thursday. So,
Yeah. And, I mean, again, these are special use permits. We can put a line in there, we can put a line in there which gives us an easy option of going back and revisiting if a year from now there's some catastrophic wrong being done that we hadn't, we weren't foreseeing. I mean, the special use permits can be revisited. That's what we're doing. So,
Well, even the ordinance could, if you had the hours, if you adopted the hours in the ordinance there, as a by right, timeframe, revisit that too, if things get out of hand.
I was not accustomed to special use permits being the way that they are in this county from other areas that I've been. Special use permits typically are for special uses, but they're revisited annually.
mhm.
It's actually, and some places use them as a money generating thing also. But they use it so that, instead of just granting a special use permit that you can do this for as long as you're in business, they revisit it once a year, just to make sure that they're still in compliance and that they're not going outside what that special use permit is. Whether it be for these events, for nightclubs, for, anything that is out of the ordinary, it's something that's checked on annually to make sure that they're meeting the necessary, and then places that do have a fire
They actually go
code.
through a process again?
No, well, yes and no. They have to be
Renewed?
renewed is all that it is. It's not a.
It doesn't require another public
Not
hearing?
a public hearing or
Okay,
anything,
okay.
but it's just to make sure that they are in compliance with their special use permit. It's sort of like the bed and breakfasts that say, oh, well, we get inspected. Well, they got inspected when they became a bed and breakfast. Most of them haven't been inspected since to make sure that they are compliant with having fire extinguishers and that sort of thing. Yeah, but it falls along the same line. I don't know if maybe we could start heading in that direction with the special use permits that,
Given that we have the opportunity to revisit if there's a problem, I'm not sure that I'd want to put an automatic review of it.
no, I'm just saying at some point, we probably need to move in that direction because so often when any business operates for a period of time and you don't go out and check on them, they tend to expand past their allowed And whether it be,
Fishing Creek.
right, whether it be this, or it be a restaurant that, oh, we're gonna do dancing, we're gonna have a live band. You know,
What-
same type of deal.
I'm not, I understand what you're saying. Of course, I think the same is probably true of businesses that aren't using special use permits.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
what I was going to say about the restaurant. The
Yeah.
restaurant doesn't have a special use permit for dancing, and they should.
Mhm.
They didn't have dancing when they opened, and now they've decided they're gonna have it. Well, they're required
What
to
kind
have
of
it.
restaurants they got up here, West? We don't hold with that kind of stuff down at western end of the
Yeah,
county.
I know, you pushed them over into Louisa County, and then they went out of business.
From your perspective, John, once we become current with the by right uses, both state code and our own individual ordinance, text amendments and changes, what's left that you would see as triggering an SUP for these three cases, not generally, but in these three cases? I mean, it seems to me that we ought to look at whatever those things that trigger it are and really make sure that we want that to trigger an SUP. I'm not a big fan of SUPs, because to me, it typically means that, especially the way we use them, that means that our ordinance is not up to, not as current as it could be. You know, if it's a one-time, you know, for the next year, I'm gonna be, you know, doing something really crazy, then fine, that's an SUP, but, for an ongoing business to operate under an SUP.
Well, I don't know, the whole concept of an SUP, in other words, you define in a particular zoning category, these are the things that are by right. And then there are some things that somebody might wanna do in that zoning category that stress the limits in terms of transportation, in terms of noise, in terms of a variety of things, hours of operation. And so there are certain things you say, hey, this is by right, you can do it, we don't care. But if you're going to do this, we wanna look at it and see, does it need some other restrictions? And that's why you got two sets of categories in a zoning area. And so
Yeah, I mean, I like the SUPs. But, you know, I think it gives you a nice middle ground between by right and rezoning.
That's right.
Or saying no.
And it allows, well, I mean, in any of those, yeah, you always have the right to say no. But you also have the ability that you don't have with a rezoning, and of course, we've talked about this before, you know, we probably need about 20 more classifications in our zoning
Yes.
ordinance. But our zoning blocks are so large that there's a massive amount of different things that can go on within them, whereas with an SUP, you can tailor it.
Tailor it through this large area.
But,
Yeah.
back to my question, what, you know, I see the list of things that are gonna become by right for various reasons. What does the list look like that's SUP? If it's not hours of operation, if it's not noise, cause we don't have
Event
a,
activities,
Would be the retail stores.
Yeah, the farm stands, now, let me start by saying this. If you look at Berrywood's conditions, technically right now, they don't even need an SUP. Because if they're operating a farm market of smaller than 1,000 square feet, that's a permitted by right use. So if they're, the only exception now, all they really have to comply with here is the hours of operation.
So that's the only thing in this SUP that is beyond the by right that the state requires.
The only exception might be the crafts, if they have somebody providing crafts from off-site for sale, that would apply. Anything, like I mentioned, is in terms of a farm enterprise that's grown on-site or made on-site, as part of an ag operation, you can sell on-site. So that's all permitted under the farm market use.
They do sell some things that are not produced there, both animal products such as eggs, but also things made out of whatever, but I mean manufactured.
crafts.
But if we look at just what his says here, handcrafted on-site, gift baskets, on-site raised, grown, produced products, that's within the law now. So the only condition under theirs was the the hours of operation is the only thing that would not comply with the standard allowed zoning for that, for agro.
Essentially, yes.
I think I understand where Jim's coming from. The only thing I'm concerned about is these are three businesses that need to move on. So my main thing here is to get things so they can go ahead and not worry. We unquestionably have got some issues with how we've done things and how our ordinances are set up that we need to address. I personally would rather not use these three businesses as kind of the guinea pig here.
No, I agree, and I don't propose we do that either.
Yeah.
If we find ourselves going down that rabbit hole, let's, somebody, scream
Trying to
loudly.
design our ordinances to fit these three people.
The only precedent-setting issue that I'm wrestling with is that we explicitly look at a list of things that are triggering the SUP and make sure that we're comfortable with that list. And maybe we might decide that hours of operation becomes a tailored item and therefore it's an SUP kind of thing. We might decide that we can adopt the ones that are already in there for another purpose, and be fine with it.
Or we could
I just
adopt-
don't know yet.
We could set the zoning category as by right certain hours of operation. If they wanna go beyond that,
Then it's an
becomes-
SUP.
it becomes an SUP.
And that's really the conversation that I'm pushing toward is, let's not trigger an SUP for things that could be handled,
But if
at
I'm
least in
looking at,
large measure by ordinance.
but if I'm looking at these 8 AM to 12, to 10 PM daily, I'm not sure that isn't something I would just consider it in a by right.
Or even the hours you had earlier.
Right. Yeah.
And then the one question left then is amplified music.
Well, do they actually need a permit for amplified music?
You're supposed to.
Except, you know what the words say? The words say, no amplified music for events with less than 100 attendees. Now, that's not what it wants to say, but that's what it literally says, if you read the first 8 words or
Now,
whatever.
from my perspective, I take concern with that because if you have fewer than 100 people, you don't have to get a special event permit regardless of anything.
Well, see, that's
So-
part of the problem with trying to write SUP language. I mean, Tom is tired of me hearing me say this kind of stuff, but having been drugged through a few of these, they're murder to try to write. I mean, really, read the first, special events with no amplified music for less than 100 attendees.
So,
If you stop there, it says as long as you have 101 people, you can amplify.
sharing his concern, so at 101, they can have sound trucks out there.
So what's
But
the
that's not what
difference
it's
between if I
intended to
got
say.
a 99 there or 101, whether I have amplified music? The basis for concern about amplified music should be something other than the number of attendees.
One would think.
You would think it would be just whether you have it or not, kind of thing, and the hours that you.
That would be the thing.
And that was I think both the 250, moving the threshold to 250 and allowing amplified music were two of the things that I had in mind where we would definitely want to have a clause there that makes it clear we can go back. So in other words, if you decide you're gonna have, a rock group there blaring away at
Till midnight.
150 decibels, then that's not gonna fly. If it means they set up
We can't
some
measure the decibels,
small
so I have to remember
amplifiers so
that.
people in the back can hear, and it's no more than a loud radio, which my neighbors do, and, then that's fine.
Well, what's the definition of amplified music? Does the farmer have to turn his tractor off after a certain hour if he has a radio on it?
See, again, I have a problem with
Yeah.
that from an administration standpoint because nothing in the ordinance prohibits them from having amplified
Radio
music.
has amplifiers in it.
Yeah, I mean, if someone,
Exactly. And that's,
Oh,
I think the test is something more than just the instrument or
Yeah.
the
Well,
device making music.
But getting back to,
well, it means going over the sound
Let me
system
just add
is
one
what
thing.
I think is what it means. It's a use of the sound system.
yeah,
Is really what that means, is trying to say, but it,
but if getting back to Mark's point, rather than trying to solve what should be in an SUP and whatnot, do we just wanna go ahead and say, all right, how do we revise these specific SUPs to deal with things that, we'd say, first of all, pull out all of the stuff that's by right, by law, and then look at the others and say, are these reasonable continuum or not? And just go ahead and redo these things, and at the same time, but not necessarily having to be, this doesn't have to be tailored to some zoning ordinance that defines what's in and what's out, or what's in and SUP, before we can move with this. I think Mark's point is, let's just get on with this, and then we can go ahead and at some point, fairly close, make the other changes.
Well, right off the bat, it gets rid of one of the SUPs if you do everything that's by right that they're doing currently.
That's right, so this SUP would go away.
Right.
Are you talking about Honolulu?
Yeah,
Yeah, assuming you adopted the hours of operation
That would-
somewhere in the
But
ordinance.
they are currently, their SUP, and yeah, I know it's right here in front of me, but, you know, scrolling is hard. It's, are they currently licensed for a retail, how are they currently licensed for sales at this point?
It says specifically farm market, it does not give them retail abilities.
Farm market within a structure of less than 1,000.
Okay, but they sell, but they have a vineyard and winery there, and they sell wine there.
That falls under agriculture.
So, yeah, so which is another issue here. I mean, we got all these cross currents.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they wanted to expand and make it, have a 2,000 square foot, building, then they would need retail, except if you said, well, they're selling wine there, then it would be under agricultural, and so it's.
But at their current, which was what we're trying to address, right?
Yeah, but they're selling both out of that. I mean, their farm market is also their wine tasting room. It's all one thing.
I was
But-
just gonna, off the cuff, suggest, in the ag zoning, you can take a, retail use up to 4,000 square feet. And I was just gonna suggest, if we wanna streamline it through all three, just say a combined farm market retail operation of no less than, or no greater than 4,000 square feet. And then anything that any more specifics we get beyond that, we say related to the agriculture, farm enterprise, or agritourism uses on the property. And that would keep them from selling like furniture or, you know, uranium-235 or something like that. And I think it would accommodate the intent of all of these specific items that I see in here. But just a thought.
But they could sell uranium if they mined it there on the farm.
True. Good.
Jim pointed that
Yes,
out.
which,
That's not
but that's
Comes out of
mining.
the ground. All right.
Besides,
The attorneys
235
put
is
the
pretty
kibosh on
refined,
that
so.
plan. I certainly don't have a problem with Josh going through and removing anything that's by right, as long as it's something that's very obviously by right. Anything that I think that's kind of on the edge there, I think should be left in there just for clarity's sake.
But how does that get with moving from 100 to 250 and changing hours?
Well, the interesting thing is that apparently Dan Gregg had actually talked with Dan Holmes with PEC, and that 250 number sort of has the PEC's stamp of approval, I suppose. They found that up to 250, it doesn't really impact the neighbors, but above that is when they start running into problems.
So we don't want a big
I'm
rush.
thinking if the PEC's in favor of it, you know, I mean,
We ought to be able to.
can we disagree?
Okay.
Reduces conflict.
Yeah, and that's what we're all about, right?
But I guess.
I mean, the problem is, you get into these, excuse me, Josh, we get into these things, I mean, 100, I mean, they're doing weddings. I mean, you know, some people, you know,
Have
my
more
wedding,
than 100
my
friends.
wedding, there was about 50 people, but I mean, some people know a lot of people, so, you you know. I mean, and that's what they're talking about. I mean, I think you have to, these are all people that we know and they've been in business for a while. They're not, you know, they're not gonna open up some weird, thing that goes to all hours and creates all kinds of problems for the neighbors. These are farm markets.
We're not gonna have a Woodstock there.
It's a winery. Yeah, you know, we're not gonna have a
Although
racetrack
it'd
or
be a hell of a
something.
boost to the economy. Yes, it would.
I'm not sure Woodstock is much of a boost.
Well, I mean, it's along that line that every time I read these things, I end up with the same question. What in here would cause me to want to restrict them by SUP? I haven't found anything yet, to be honest with you. Especially if you take hours of operation off, and you give them the option of either a farm market or a retail store that's already provided for.
I think the special events, I did that just so you were watching. The special events that Grelin is doing would be an issue without an SUP, correct? They would need,
There's nothing to prohibit them from coming in every single week and getting a permit to do it.
right, but that would be onerous.
It would, from both ends.
And maybe
For both sides.
maybe it's better, all things considered, that a SUP does cover that for them.
That's.
And I'm okay with,
Mhm.
with that kind of thing, because
Yep.
that's really outside the ag farm stuff.
And the other two, I mean, well, Honolulu's also getting into weddings. They're getting into the overflow from the B&Bs. We know about B&Bs and weddings.
So is that up to the turkey houses, or?
Don't be rude.
I'm not. I'd like to know where on site they're doing that.
I don't know. I didn't get married out there.
The radio tower, the vineyards.
There's nice wide open fields there.
Right, I was just curious where,
I'll get that information and get back to you.
As long as they're not
So
skinny
you need,
dipping in the water
to make
tank.
some plans here, Jim?
yeah, I mean, that's,
But we don't.
I'd like to keep my options open.
Is that on the record?
Unfortunately, I believe it.
Let's see. Yep, Dan's here on the record.
Are we, under ag tourism or some of these new definitions, are we gonna include, maybe not specifically, but generally, things like weddings?
Yeah, I actually specifically put that in our agritourism definition that you'll get next month.
See?
Um,
I'm
well-
back to my same problem.
There's one catch to it. I'll just read it verbatim here. The commercial hosting of weddings, corporate retreats, celebrations, and other similar events within facilities dedicated for such uses is considered agritourism if the parcel on which they are hosted is of a bona fide agricultural use, which all three of these are. So that covers
Say
people.
that again.
Does he have to?
No, can he?
If
you're
got
growing
land-
something
if
or
you've got
raising
land
something,
use, you can do it.
Or plan to. You don't even have to be doing it. You can have a plan.
Exactly.
The commercial hosting of weddings, corporate retreats, celebrations, and other similar events within facilities dedicated for such uses is considered agritourism if the parcel on which they are hosted is of a bona fide agricultural use. So that covers people who want to transform barns into event spaces, but does not cover tents. Because
So if I wanna use the barn to have dances,
yes,
But,
Well.
okay, question, is that still an agricultural?
They're big on
use?
dances down there.
And the reason that I asked that, I believe state code says that you can have offices, everything in a barn, until such time as the public is invited into it, then it has to be inspected. And that's where my concern is, because you're now going from an agricultural use of that structure to a different use.
I'm glad you brought that up. The final sentence of that definition, zoning permit issuance for such facilities is conditioned upon approval from the building official and the Virginia Department of Health. So they have to get a change of use permit with the building official before we'll even give them a zoning permit.
So
I was on top of it.
Step ahead of you there.
I just wanted to make sure, because,
No, safety's, I mean, that's key for those things. A lot of those barns are really old, and if you're gonna cram 250 people in there with a bunch of amplified music. It's just certain
Some of
things
the,
you have
some
to
of the barns may
consider.
not hold up with the
Those old
amplified
40-inch
music.
timbers might just give way.
The use or the definition of ag tourism that you were including weddings and things like that, is that anything out of the state code, or is that our own language?
That is, I copied and pasted the state code and then added those two sentences on the end of it.
Okay.
To just accommodate the
Okay.
nature of that use in our county. I know Tom's mentioned before with that definition, there's gonna be lawsuits related for it. It's just too vague. But I think anytime we can add any specificity to ours helps us out as a county.
You're talking about the state code is too vague?
Yeah.
So we're providing more specificity in what we would end up doing.
I think so.
Well, what do we want to send to the planning commission then?
Well, I mean, Josh, Brian, from what you're hearing here today, do you feel like you could take that and craft an SUP and bring it back to us at the next meeting that addresses the consensus here?
I think so.
Probably have to be ordinance language and SUPs, because they'd have to.
Well, that
we'll
was-
take the combination of the two to make the fix, I think is what they're saying.
Well, to the extent that that is correct, then I revise and extend my remarks.
Let me, ask, less from a substantive question on the amendments, but more of a
Sounds good on C-SPAN.
We have our own.
process question. I think the board was interested in moving this along, in time to signal to the, some.
Well, I'm just saying, are we far enough along that we can send to the planning commission, or do we need another chop at it?
I mean, 2 weeks, we can come back with that, and then the planning commission's meeting that they would get this would be March.
Tom is gone, but his position on this was, we have, the three principals know that we're working on this, and they know generally what we're doing, so they can sort of go ahead and make their plans accordingly. As long as this board doesn't do some kind of highly unanticipated U-turn, then they should be good.
Okay.
Well, that would be the only question, because if you get too far down the road, that alters concepts for spring.
and that was my
Yes,
question.
well, that's-
When does their season start? April?
I honestly don't know exactly when. I mean, it's gonna vary, I think, between the,
After this 50-day February, I don't know.
Well, no, I didn't mean the harvesting seasons, I meant the
think,
event season.
I think homilies will start whenever it stops snowing, and,
I think,
because they've been going right along.
I would assume the three of them, if they have any capital projects they wanna undertake for, to support additional business opportunities, I think that's probably things that they would say, okay, we'll start planning to expend that dollars.
I mean, we're talking about, this, if you get
Just
it back to
weeks.
us,
Weeks.
yeah.
But I remember it was important to the board to be deliberate.
I would think the planning commission could take it up in April, I would think,
What
at the very
what would
latest.
be that schedule?
I've actually got it on their agenda for next week, but I haven't sent that out yet.
We weren't assuming the board would take action today, we were being proactive.
Very much so.
Um, Planning commission, we'd be back here on the 10th. Well, actually, we've got, the budget work session, but then that's not a time. But we'd be back here on the 10th work session, and then the planning commission would get this on the 19th, right?
We can do that.
And then they could have a public hearing on the April 2nd.
They could, if they get everything they wanna get done.
Or the
But there again, if that gets delayed.
It's enough
or-
time between the 19th and the 2nd to get it advertised?
No, we need a week before the meeting, 3 weeks before the meeting date.
Okay, so,
So you could, the work could be done the 19th and the 2nd, and the public hearing on the 16th of April.
Here again, I mean, I think, you know, and when I talked to them, they understood that, you know, this is gonna take a little while to get done, because government doesn't do anything overnight, but, except raise taxes.
Well, they have that understanding.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we need to go ahead and do it, but I don't think we need to be hung up on whether we get the first meeting in April or the second meeting. I don't think that's.
So he's gonna come back next week then with the revised or recommended revisions to the SUPs, as well as a revised ordinance that would mesh with that. And we can look at it at the next meeting.
With this, the amendment with the B&Bs and the agritourism, I think you guys are getting that on the 10th for a public hearing. So that make it a little easier after that. Just thinking out loud.
So it sounds like you're suggesting that you prepare this assuming that has been adopted. Those changes have been adopted.
That would make this a little, yeah, it would make it a little
I
easier.
think you're probably right on that. That makes sense. Otherwise, there are things we have to redo.
Just so to kind of keep this thing, the planning commission would be doing their work, and the board would have its public hearing subsequent to the planning commission. So we may be in a late April, early May public hearing time frame for the board.
Right.
So let me get clarification on 3 points. Grayland can have a retail market up to 4,000 square feet. Liberty Mills can go up to 2,000 square feet. Hopwood is limited to 1,000. Is there any interest in providing 4,000 for all three?
That's what I would say, yeah.
Okay, that's, okay.
Does the way our ordinance is currently written, don't they have to have an SUP to get to the 4,000? It's not a by right at 4,000, is it? Or is it?
It's, retail and ag's not by right at all. You have to get an SUP.
If
for
you get an
any.
SUP, that's what I thought.
But
Okay, but I'd still wanna see that as an SUP. But I mean, getting consistency in the SUPs.
That's what I,
Exactly.
yeah, that's what I was
Still, it
saying.
would still
Yeah.
require an SUP, but they would be consistent as opposed to,
Yeah.
you know, 1, 2, 4.
Okay, good. Since they're all somewhat similar, and I think they all have special events, if I'm not mistaken, whatever we provide for Grayland, for example, just because they have an existing condition, just provide across the board to the other two.
That would be my desire, yes.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And then as far as hours of operation, I'm just gonna take what's in the ordinance currently.
I think that's fine.
All right.
That was easy.
That's a good job of summarizing, Josh, in terms of getting the points clarified.
Yeah, that's a lot of material to work through, so I try to do my best.
You have anything else on this?
I do not.
All right. We got another 18 minutes before our board meeting starts. Go ahead and, anything else we need to discuss at the work session?
No, sir.
All right, let's take a break. Ready? Call the meeting to order. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear Lord, I'd like to thank you, we'd all like to thank you, for the people in this county who worked so hard to put together the new food pantry that was celebrated its opening today. There are many people, organizations, and all who understand that serving the people most in need means that they are serving you. Please bless them and let them continue to do their good work. Amen. Okay. A couple of changes to the agenda. First of all is item 5C under the consent agenda, the award of the contract for ventilators. We will be moving that to new business. That'll become item 9B. We have an item under the county attorney's report, will be a deed of notation. and that'll be item 7A. And then an additional item under the county administrator's report, Germanna letter, that'll be item 8D. Are there any other changes?
No, sir.
Motion to approve as modified.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carries unanimously. First item, item 3A, presentation of the recruitment selection of the Orange County Social Services Director. Nora Coleman.
Hi. I'm Nora Coleman, and this is Pat Neighbors. We're on the Social Services Board together. And I have handouts. I didn't get them in your packets. I'm sorry, I don't know. Am I allowed to pass them around? Thank you. We just have for you, we wanted to give you a brief update of where we are. You know Bob's retiring. He's going to retire on July 7th, will be his last official day, although he's going to be leaving the office, leveraging leave starting May 1st. May 1st will be his last day in the office. So we've been working with Vicki Johnson-Scott from the regional office. She's the regional director, and she's been helping us to develop the job description and kind of walking us through this whole process of hiring. You will see it in this handout, a draft of the job description that will be listed with just probably next week, early March. We're going to post the job description, and then depending on the response we get of qualified applicants, we're not exactly sure the start date of when we'll start interviewing, but sometime in April, and then we'll have a second round of interviews sometime in May, hopefully making a job offer the beginning of June. So, do y'all have any questions?
Is that enough time to provide any overlap? I mean, if you've got somebody that you're hiring, they may not be available right away.
Yeah, the new director wouldn't start until after Bob leaves officially on July 7th. So in that interim time, Kathy Truman, who's the assistant director, will be acting, filling in.
All right. Anybody have any questions?
Is that also true after July 7th? Let's say the new person couldn't start until September. What do you do from July 7th to September?
Kathy
Yeah,
would fill in.
Kathy would probably fill in.
Okay.
I mean, that's what she does for vacations now, so.
Just out of curiosity, since this is a state position, there's nothing next to bilingual, whether they prefer or don't prefer the bilingual skills.
We've talked about the need for bilingual. So far, that hasn't been a particular need in our county. I agree that it's coming, but we're not getting that many bilingual requests for aid.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could take an opportunity, Nora and I have had a good chat, and as well as Mr. Lingo, Bob's outgoing. I think there are a couple things that my office will be involved with. One, as a resource through the recruitment and interviewing process. The district director for social services and I met with Mr. Lingo, I guess, gosh, it was back in the fall, I think when he initially announced. So we're providing some human resources kind of support of collecting applications and things. And then the second thing is that we've had a series of ongoing conversations with Bob and Kathy and now Nora and the Social Service Board, that this might give a good opportunity to look at some of the back office functions that social services does independent of our office, like financial management, human resources, pay and classification, and that we may take an opportunity of coming up with maybe opportunities to integrate some of these and move some redundancies that are there. One of the things that we have to be very mindful of is that the state social service enabling law and the way things are structured is that we're not a city. Where cities' social service departments are a line department underneath the city manager. In counties, these are independent agencies. I guess I think we did the math today, Glenda. It's about 70% federal money, state money coming in, 30% local. And so while this board is a funder, it's not the complete funder of this operation. but we see a lot of opportunity to integrate some of the, kind of the financial management and some other functions without jeopardizing the independency of that board. And I think the Social Services Board is interested in working with us to kind of come up with some items to integrate, remove redundancies, so that the new director coming in will have some direction from the board that is hiring that person to keep this going forward. And Bob understands that he's certainly very supportive of this, as well as Kathy. You know, devil's in the details, but I think there's a willingness in all parties to kind of look to see how we might be able to provide some more efficiencies than heretofore. Did I cover that good enough?
Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item, update on the real estate assessment, reassessment. Gary Eames?
Yes, sir. How are you, Mr.
Good.
Chairman, board members? Just wanted to come by and give you folks an update on the process that we're in. We're still in early stages. We've started back in September, but we're still in the what we call the measuring and listing part of the project, where we're knocking on doors, verifying the information, looking at land sales, and still digesting the market, basically. Wanted to introduce Mike Didewick. He's our chief appraiser, who has been here the entire project, and Mike touches base with the Commissioner of Revenue's office daily to pick up any changes that Renee's office makes, and make sure the flow goes over to our office as well. I want to show you a map of basically where we've been so far. One appraiser is in Lake of the Woods, and you see it. Where would you like?
Oh, just
Just stick it right out here.
Okay, very good. One appraiser is in Lake of the Woods, so that area is a very large concentrated area of parcels, so this map won't color in for a while. But you can see that Gordonsville's basically finished, and we've headed east or over toward Greene County, and we're working our way back down 20 toward Mount Pillier. This appraiser has made it all the way over to Lake Anna, and then we'll be proceeding north. So covering some ground, still looking at sales, trying to figure out where it's going to fall once we're all finished. One indication of one thing we look at are listings, and we belong to MRIS, which is the multiple listing service here, and I did a search. There are about 230 sales right now active in the county, and if they were to get the asking price, which it never happens, but our listing, or the current values versus the listing values, we're at about 67% of value. So
The listing price is 67%?
Our market value is at 67% of market value, of listing price.
So the
In other
assessed
words,
value.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
the assessed
so-
value, yes, the
Okay,
assessed
so
value, I'm sorry.
the listing value is
So in other words, if a
about
house-
50% more than the
Right.
assessed value.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly. So if they get those prices, then there would be an increase, but we're still following the sales. We have to follow sales,
Understand.
but that's just one indication.
Have you seen, how much difference have you seen between the sales and the listing?
I didn't study that part of it yet. No, so
Okay.
we haven't.
All right.
But still too early to give you any numbers at this point. But just wanted
Okay.
to let you know, and that we are proceeding and making good time now. And of course, once we get through this month, it'll break through. So we'll
We're
cover
always
this map.
break through.
This map. They say we get through February, we can march on through. So this map will color in a lot faster now that.
Any
warmer
problems
months-
with meeting the required schedule?
No, sir. I don't think so.
All right.
I think we're good.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, obviously that ratio of what the sales price to assessed value shows
Right.
there's some movement in the market up.
It sounds like it.
And the number of listing, is that sound like a normal number? Is it high? Is it low?
It's probably typical, just typical of the market here.
There are an awful lot in Lake of the Woods on the market, it seems like, you know, going through there, it's just Lake of the Woods, and
We
of course, that's a
expect-
high concentrated area too.
It's February and it's still snowing.
And it's February, that's right. So, you know, those, you know, and that's a high residential area. And see a lot of townhouses on the market. Of course, you still have, you know, a lot of townhouses out there that are being built in that end of the county.
So not forecasting things too much, but you could probably say that.
Yeah,
we've
seeing it
bottomed-
better. I mean, I think
we've
it,
bottomed out and now
hopefully,
trends show that we're more in an
I believe we are.
appreciating economy. as
Yes,
far
sir.
as real estate.
yeah. And then, of course, the other end of the county, you know, where all the named estates are, you know, there are listings there that, you know, we're real low on value if they were to get what they were asking for. So, you know, that's why it's always, you have to gauge, you know, different markets here. You've got one extreme to the other.
In addition to the 200 or so listings that are out there, how do you characterize let's say the actual closings and sales over the past 12 to 18 months? Is that
We're
very limited, or is there something to work with, or how would you?
There's something to work with there. We've analyzed those, and I think that the current ratio is right at about 110, I believe. I'd have to check with Renee on that. So we're still, you know, the sales are still higher than, or lower than the assessed values there. So we're,
Out of curiosity, do you all, on new construction that's been recently completed, is there a reason that you go out and take measurements on something that's just gotten an occupancy permit?
we have a contract with the county that, and that was one thing we pulled off of the reassessment and cleaned up all the new construction, the COs and everything, at the end of the year 14, so we could get those on the tax records for 2014.
Okay,
So
so it's
we-
within the contract to go out and.
Yes, sir. And
measure
do all
a
the new.
brand new property?
Yes, sir. We do those every year. That's a maintenance contract that we have with Orange County
Okay.
in between assessments there. So we had to honor that contract as well because that was still went over to the last contract.
Okay.
So we stopped in December there and went out and picked up all the new construction.
Mr. Chairman, one final question. When will you all complete your field work and then come back and get the book ready and get the Board of Equalization will need to be impaneled? Give us an idea.
Usually October is wrap-up time, and then we try to start our hearings, the informal hearings sometime in November, early December. We have to have our book signed by December 31st, and then we will, I guess, you folks will submit to the circuit court people to serve on your Board of Equalization, and they'll probably start, I would think, as early as February this time next year, seeing folks that we didn't satisfy during our hearings.
And they'll conclude their work in time for the first installment, but we're going to be in a equalization.
Yeah, you'll need to check with the county attorney there. Some of the laws have changed on that. They have to allow 45 days with the Board of Equalization now before the first hearing. So you have to advertise, start taking appointments, and then you can't have your first meeting until 45 days out.
Really?
So it's really,
It can be waived, though.
but you can waive.
The homeowner
We
can
found
waive
that.
it, so we can't force somebody to come less than 45 days, but people can waive that 45. Most people are willing to, because.
They wanna get it done.
They want to get it over with. And we had one, I forget which county it's in right now, that the person, they said, no, I want my 45 days. So that's what,
So this time next year, also in the budget cycle, we're going to have to turn what the equalized rate is and
Yes, sir.
all of that information will be with us next year.
we should have some good, numbers to you just prior to sending out those notices. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions?
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Sure.
We appreciate being here.
Okay, next up is the public comment. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We have one speaker, Ms. Phyllis Yancey, treasurer.
Good evening. I'll just take a minute of your time. I wanted to let you know that I am not going to run for re-election. I've been here since July 1st, 1991. It's flown by. It's been wonderful. Wouldn't have done anything any differently. But it's time for me to retire. I appreciate all the help that I've had from everybody, from the new people and the people who've been here for a long time. I really appreciate it, and I think we've worked well together. And I'll be glad to help if you know someone who might want to run, they can come into the office and I can talk to them about the job. And certainly hope we have someone who wants to run.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your many years of dedicated service to the county and the people of the county.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to thank you for announcing really early, giving everybody an opportunity to begin the process for running for that office. It's very nice. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Thank you for all your years of service, Phyllis.
I'm sorry, I didn't really come for that. I really just meant
Well,
thank you.
Well, you're gonna get it.
We're gonna get that. You're gonna get that eventually anyway, a little more formally. But again, thanks.
Well, I mean, because I've known you forever and ever, and I do appreciate the job you've done. And you sure you're old enough to retire?
I don't think so. But I'm not telling.
Did George approve that yet?
He's sitting fairly far away, so.
Sorry.
Well, anyway, I hope whatever you do, enjoy yourself.
Thank you. Thank all of you.
And thank you for serving out your term.
Save a little bit of money, right?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say I didn't know Phyllis as long as everyone else has. I've known her just a year, but it seems like it's been a very good relationship. It's like we've worked together for years, and so I certainly will miss her, and we'll work her good until December 31st of this year. So, but I've enjoyed the relationship.
Well, it's a good relationship. She collects the money we spend.
Yeah. That's right. See, now that you've announced early, you're gonna pay for this next several months. You've committed to stay, so.
Okay. Anybody else signed up for public comment?
No, sir.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Item C has been removed. Anybody have anything, questions on the consent agenda?
Move we approve.
Second.
Motion to approve and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item is the Department Director, Constitutional Officers Report, Office on Youth Quarterly Report. Alicia Vines.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me time to share what we've been doing over at the Office on Youth over the past several months. I provided a quick snapshot of some things that we have going on or have coming up. I just want to touch on a few of those and give you some more information on a few other things we have going on. One of our biggest things of the year we have is this Saturday. It's our father-daughter dance. We are very busy selling tickets. It's one of my favorite things. If you guys are in town at all on Saturday, please stop by. The little girls come in with their dads, uncles, grandfathers, brothers, you name it, and they're all dressed up, and they just have a really good time, and I like sitting and watching them. So it's just a great thing. The other thing on the snapshot is the Garvis Huff Outstanding Youth and Youth Advocate Awards. It's March 17th, and I'm happy to say this year we'll be recognizing more advocates than I have since I've been with the Office on Youth. We have 8 advocates, 19 middle schoolers, and 10 high school students that we will be recognizing for their services to the county. They've all been nominated by peers, teachers, and so forth. So if you guys are free that night, you will be receiving an invitation, but if you're free that night, we would enjoy having you. Some of the other things we have going on, I just wanted to give you an update on our crime control. Year to date, we've had 32 kids who are serving their community service placements. We've had 21 who've had successful completions year to date, and year to date they've completed 642 hours of community service compared to 632 at the same time last year. Jenny Strong at the animal shelter has been one of our biggest allies. We've had a lot of kids go over there, and they've been doing a lot of good things with her. We've had 10 kids referred for substance abuse assessments. 6 of them have completed successfully. and 8 of them have been referred for actual services for education and treatment, and of those we've had 5 successful completions and the rest are receiving their treatments now. We have had 15 placements for our child-specific services so far this year, which is the anger management evals and just specialized services. 15 current placements, 9 have completed their evals or their counseling with 60 sessions completed, so we're very pleased with that. And we're also planning for a Thinking for a Change group that will be starting probably closer to the end of the fiscal year. We overlap them. And we've also paired that up with a parent education group at the same time. We had a very good response when we did that last time, so we plan to do that again. So that's kind of an update on our kids that are having a little bit of issues. We have our Michael's Gift fundraiser, our Jailbreak 2015, coming up next Friday. Headquarters are at the Orange Firehouse. If you'd like to stop by, please do so. Currently, we have 22 people signed up that are willing to post their bail. Our goal is to raise about $6,000, and right now, if everybody raises what we've asked, we'll meet that. So we're very happy, and it's just a really fun day. We will be posting pictures on Facebook of people behind bars and everything, so you can laugh at them if you want. In addition to our upcoming activities on the snapshot, one of the things that we have going on is the first ever that we've done is planning a street festival type event to help support the after prom. This will be scheduled for April 18th at OCHS, and Jason Woods, who's in our office, likes to come up with the names for our different events, so he's called it Lottapalooza since it's in the parking lot. We're selling spaces basically like a street festival, just raising money to help pay for the expenses. After prom is paid for completely by sponsorships and donations. And so far, as of today, we have raised $2,900 from community sponsors, which includes a $600 grant from Mary Washington Healthcare that I'm actually going to pick up tomorrow, which is great. The cost this year is estimated to be about $5,800, so we do have a little ways to go, so we're hoping this fundraiser will help offset those costs. Another event that we're excited about is not going to happen until June 24th, but just wanted to share it with you. We're working with Orange DSS on getting a community resource event together. And it's DSS, schools, private providers, Triad, anything that is a service that we can possibly pull in. We are planning on having an event at the high school at the field house on June 24th from 9 to 3. We're very excited. It's free for the vendors. We are providing lunch because we're doing it through a grant. I'm trying to provide more outreach to the community for resources. We're looking at renting Toot. I've called and left a message. We're waiting to hear back from them so that we can provide transportation for some of the families who may need it. And one of the other things is we're hoping to have a car seat check station that day for parents. Check for proper installation, seat recalls, and educator appearance. It seems to be one of the things we're hearing that needs to happen. And on that note, I actually met with the Gordonsville Police Department this morning. They have a certified technician, and I'm also a certified technician to help educate and install car seats correctly. And I'll be working with them to kind of police or monitor or educate the parents at Gordon Barber one afternoon in the near future, just to make sure the car seats are installed correctly. They haven't expired, just trying to do a little bit of more community outreach. And I'm also hoping to attend an event in June I'm very excited about in Manassas, where we get to go watch them crash cars and see how it affects the car seats and all of that good stuff, so I can earn some CU so I can get recertified. But we also want to start promoting that our office is offering this. It is a call ahead and make an appointment because I'm always in and out, but we do want the public to know that this is offered in Orange and in the town of Orange. So we have a lot of things going on.
You got anybody? I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
For the children that go through the various either drug programs or anger management programs, and they, quote, successfully complete the program, do we keep any tabs or any records on follow-up as to whether these programs have taken? And
we have to do a report at the end of each year. We get a report that I can print out at the end of each year that compares our rearrest data to the state of the same program. So every year we have to do a report and turn it back into the state so that we can know, is the true rearrest are they up for a certain program? We need to kind of look into a different program because this one's not working. So we do monitor it that way. I also work very well with the probation officers to follow up on some of these kids too.
Okay, so if you had to look at a number in terms of rearrest or any indication through probation officers of people, quote, finished a program, but are in trouble again, do you have any numbers percentage-wise?
Not right off the top of my head, but I can get those for you if you'd like. I do see kids coming back through our office for community service and even substance abuse treatments, assessments. It's a small handful that come back through. So we do have some kids that repeat, and the judge sends them our way again. And so we're trying to figure out a different program for them because apparently what we did didn't work. So we're just trying to figure out what the kids need and what works best, because what works best for this kid is not working for this kid. So
I'd be just interested. You can just send me an email or send all of us an email of what the rates are that are. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I actually have one. Have you noticed any difference since the school system implemented their random drug testing for all the extracurricular activities? Have you noticed?
we have maintained our referrals, if that's what you mean.
Okay, well, that's what I was curious.
Yes, and they vary, and it depends on the time of the year. We see a lot of referrals around homecoming time, because the kids are out doing things they shouldn't, and they've gotten caught, so we get an influx every year at that point. But overall, they have remained steady.
And I know, once again, this is probably a statistical that you don't follow. You seen if you have any of the kids that are in the extracurricular activities, or if it's ones that are not involved?
It's both.
It is both.
I've had 2 students who were actually on the youth council at one point who have been referred to my office, and so, yes, sir.
They were doing testing for the youth council.
Yes, exactly. No, so it's both ends, so yes, sir.
All right.
Okay.
So,
Anybody else?
will you be coming to get me, or should I just postpone it?
You tell me when you want me to pick you up, and the kids will be happy to come make you put that black and white suit on and come on over to the firehouse.
Call me tomorrow, I'll look at my calendar.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Next is the county attorney's report.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you have in front of you, you amended your agenda to include this item, and I apologize for the late addition, but I just received the final document I needed today. As you know, we close our landfill. As part of the process, DEQ requires us by law, state law requires us to file what's called a deed notation. That basically puts on the public record that this was a landfill, so that I guess we don't try and sell it to somebody for a subdivision. But, so all this is the deed notation. All I'm asking for is a motion authorizing the chairman to sign this so that we can get it on the record.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion or questions for the attorney? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Anything else?
That's all I have.
All right. County Administrator's Report. Mr. Bry.
Yes,
Mr. David.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, first, giving you an update to the Central Virginia Regional Jail Authority. As you know, they've gone through several iterations of their budget. I will be reporting where that budget stands as relation to the county's budget as part of my budget presentation on Thursday evening and my one-on-one meetings with you all individually up until the next day or two. I would just say that the budget that's been put forward is challenging and has been challenging for the county since it was first introduced back in December. We are really, I guess it's down to where we are obligated and certainly have a public safety consideration to fund the jail, but the 200-bed expansion is absolutely putting a strain on our county finances. I'm confident we'll find a way through. I'm confident that the jail will continue to provide the best service to the county. It's just this working through part that is, it's occupied quite a bit of everybody's time today. The next thing is that I make you all aware that under the policy of the jail authority, this board can ask the superintendent to make themselves available to brief this board on matters involving the jail authority and such. And I'm seeing if there's any interest in you all having me invite him to do so.
I would so move. I feel it's important that we hear directly from him instead of through other means.
Anybody else?
I would add that he is, at this moment, I think, attending the Madison County Board of Supervisors work session. He's appeared in Greene, and I think Louise and Fluvanna are making some requests.
We'd want to do it in a regular board meeting or a work session?
I would, just given scheduling and all this, how about if I make it the first available time that you all convene? If it's a budget work session, we can accommodate that if it's a regular meeting.
Okay.
I don't know his availability to coincide with you all's meeting schedule.
Okay. Do I have a consensus to invite him to, all right?
And this is to share about the proposed budget as well as the jail expansion and any questions you all may have.
Okay. Let's go ahead and,
Thank you. Next is Germanna-wilderness area plan. The steering committee met for its last time dealing with the plan document itself as well as the comments. I'll certainly let Mr. Frame or Mr. White speak to that process, but I think it was good. It was very vigorous, and I think those that have commented are receiving the full attention of the committee, and in fact, a number of edits were made to the plan. Next steps, the plan will be formally presented to the Planning Commission next Thursday. Mr. Yancey as chair is prepared for that. We'll have a brief presentation. At the same time, I think the EDA is to receive the document on March 12th. Planning Commission will go through its process, public hearing to make it a recommendation to the board. The EDA will look at the document, revise it, make recommendations as they see fit. This culminating with bringing it to you all at some meeting, probably not too far distant from this month, for you all to do your work on it and eventually have a public hearing. The steering committee is working through next steps. Maybe you all want to fill in on some of that.
I think we've finalized the document from the standpoint of the steering group. At this point, it's just a matter of getting the EDA to review it and the Planning Commission to review, hold public hearing, and make their recommendations. And then we'll get before us.
And the steering committee is, in essence, working in parallel, trying to define some of the next steps and things like this. We don't want to get in front of the approval of the plan, obviously, through the formal process, but it also gives us an opportunity to just sort of have some discussions, among the steering committee members and exchange some ideas, gather some information, and start really trying to give some structure to the next steps that we're facing. And so steering committee's still busy, even though we've passed the plan itself on, or will be passing it on to the other two bodies at the moment.
Any questions?
One other edit. In my memo, it said I'd be distributing the final version of the comment matrix. Remember that didn't produce the paper. It is on the website, so you will see under the Germanna-wilderness area plan the page. Click through to those actual final comments. I have sent out letters to all the commenters yesterday. I think they went out in the mail yesterday by email. So that's all I have on the GWAL.
Okay. Any other?
Next is distribution of county administrator's recommended budget. I think past practice is that tonight was the night when the line item budget would be distributed. Because of this year's budget, and like last year, I think it was productive. I'm meeting one-on-one with board members today, tomorrow, and ramping up to Thursday at 7 p.m. when I make the formal presentation of my proposed budget. I don't want to, give any discussion about what's coming on Thursday. I think each board member will certainly have time to assess the proposed budget, and I know we'll work to a state where you all can act and approve the budget for next year. The next item I had was a late item. Mr. Steve Hine, who is the Chief Operating Officer or
Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. At the Germanna Foundation, sent me an email on Friday. They are seeking a designation from the 2016 World Monuments Fund watch list, and this would be for the Fort Germanna and the Enchanted Castle archaeological site. Before you is a draft letter that Steve helped us develop for your consideration. Recommendation is that you would authorize the chair to sign this letter expressing your support for their designation as a on the World Monuments Fund watch list. Did we get you copies for the press?
Does this also enable them to get funding for some of their archaeological work?
Yes, sir, thank you. I think there's some opportunities for grants and for, if this is on the list, then being able to bring philanthropic money forward.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this? Any problems with sending this out? Okay.
That's good. Do you need a motion on it, or?
Yes, sir, I would just a motion to
Okay.
authorize.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, next item is new business, request for subdivision vacation agreement. Mr. Frederick.
Mr. Chairman, I have before you a bit of a unusual request. I think we're all familiar with Wilderness Shores subdivision. Prior to that subdivision being laid out and platted, back in the 1920s, I believe, Somerville Road was a 30-foot right-of-way / easement that was dedicated via deed. That easement was never formally vacated prior to Wilderness Shores being platted, and is thus still actually a valid right-of-way. So Tricord, which is constructing Wilderness Shores, has requested the board to vacate the portion of Somerset Road, or Somerville Road, that runs in the Wilderness Shores property. This is in accordance with, specifically with state code and our subdivision ordinance. As you can see in my memo, though, we have two options for doing that. One is a written instrument signed by the subdivision agent, which currently would be myself, pending approval by the board. The second one is the one I'm recommending, since it does affect properties adjacent to Wilderness Shores, would be an actual motion and ordinance by the board. This would necessitate a public hearing. So I am recommending that option. If you'd like to move forward, we could hold a public hearing on the 24th. I've also attached some exhibits for your review.
When we discussed that in the past, wasn't there someone using that road somewhere or another?
Yes,
Looks like a lot of people are using it.
a lot of people
They got their
are
houses
using
on it.
However, if you look at the I've been very, very familiar with this road over the years, number of different issues and everything. Everything that's being asked to be vacated is owned by Tricord. There's total usage of existing roads to get to any houses, any other properties, anything. This is actually causing a problem with, I've gotten a couple of phone calls about it. I know the sheriff's office deals with it on a regular basis. They have people using dirt bikes and ATVs and everything. They're the ones that actually use this road. And it's not actually a road, it's an easement for a road. It's past where the state maintenance is and everything. It's just not, it should have been vacated when the subdivision was platted, quite honestly.
When was this subdivision platted?
60s?
It's been in stages. It's still in phases right now. I think anywhere from the 60s to the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, it was redone, but I think the 60s was when the whole subdivision was originally done. And I believe it was Tricord that came in and actually made the lots a little bit larger in this newer section and realigned the roads and everything, so,
It was realigned in the early nineties. But supposedly the county, you know, there was kind of a deal there to make fewer lots, and but of course a lot of the lots in the first blush were on hillsides and in gullies, and I'm not sure the county really got a whole lot for its deal, but at the time that's how it was sold.
I think in this newer section, we're much better off as far as the.
And it looks like somebody still has access to the far ends of that road anyway.
Absolutely, and,
The
when
only-
they
I
vacate-
remember that was the crux of the whole thing, the last time we discussed this, was that somebody needed access to that road.
And they now have plenty of access, there's no restrictions, to use paved roads rather than a goat trail to attempt to go
The only piece that,
properties.
that I saw that had a question about it, and it's identified as the common area A, it seems to be owned by the POA, the Property Owners Association. Is there an issue with the Property Owners Association? Because it does appear that Tricor owns all the other pieces, but that one sort of stood out, both in terms of being a different owner, but also whether it facilitates any access or not. I couldn't tell from the maps, but.
It doesn't facilitate any, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if, their representative is on the board of the HOA or the president of the HOA. Secretary. Okay, secretary of the HOA. So, that's an open space, I would classify it as a park.
It's actually completely wooded.
Yeah.
So the easement doesn't add any value to that
No.
public area or common area?
Not
anyway?
that
Okay.
specific area, no.
Okay, that, like I said, I couldn't tell from the maps whether that was.
So this has been requested by Tricord. Has the Property Owners Association also requested this, since it does cover part of their land?
No, but they will be notified if you guys approve a public hearing.
So we're asking to schedule public hearing, okay, all right. So that's the only notification other than Tricord.
Well, it does run into the golf course area, but I don't know what happens there. I mean, I assume it essentially disappears at that point. You can't drive to it and look at it, because I tried, but.
I would suggest that, I would like to, before I vote on this, I wanna actually go down there and see this, and I'm gonna need somebody there who can tell me what I'm seeing. So I would suggest that the board may think about, for those interested, arranging for a trip down there, or over there, depending on your orientation. So we can really see exactly what's going on there, what we're doing. Because just looking at some lines on a map, I don't really understand. It's probably perfectly fine, I'd just like to know what I'm doing if I'm gonna do something.
I don't have a problem.
Do you wanna wait on scheduling a public hearing for this, the field?
No, I think it could be,
Is there any urgency on this?
Not from a staff perspective, but I'm not sure on the applicant. They might wish to speak to that.
Well, if we schedule, that's 3 weeks out at least. Would that give us time to make our visit?
I would think so,
I would
yeah.
think so. So I'd be okay with scheduling.
Unless we get more snowmageddon.
Well, yeah,
Well, and even if you have the public hearing, doesn't compel you to take action.
till we get a chance to.
Do you have a
look at it.
problem voting for to schedule that?
Oh, no,
hearing?
no, we can go ahead and schedule
All
that,
right.
that's no problem.
So we're looking at March 24th is the public hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? And we do need to arrange an opportunity for people to look at this between now and the April, March 24th. We ought to be away from snow by March 24th.
I've got four-wheel drive.
So do I, and I'm glad.
All right. Can I get a motion then?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll be happy to accommodate however we can.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next item is the award of contract for ventilators. Stephanie?
Good evening, gentlemen. At the end of last month, I released a solicitation requesting bids for HT50 ventilators and accessories. We advertised this through the county website, the local paper, and the state procurement website. We received one full response. That response was given by Medical Support Products. They're the low bidder. This project would fulfill the requirements of putting one of these ventilators on every truck, so we'll be fully stocked. We'll also have them available for training, and they will afford a continuity of use throughout the entire county. And these are also the exact same models that are used in the state caches at UVA and at Fairfax. This is a CIP item, and the budget for it is included in Project C-1071.
Is this the same one we currently have?
Yes, we have two models, so this is completing it. Correct, John?
No, this is an upgraded model,
The one that we're
replacing the ones that we have, which are outdated.
I hope it isn't a knuckle buster like this one is, the current one is. Okay. Any questions?
Well, I was curious that you only got one bid. Is it just because of having to match the exact specs?
I had a lot of folks who wanted to sell me other things than what we were asking for.
Yeah, okay.
So
I assumed that was the case. We hadn't made the procurement so tight that there was only one possible.
there were several vendors. I actually called the manufacturer to make sure that they had companies throughout the country who could sell it to us, and they were there. They just wanted to sell us a different model that
Sure, okay.
we didn't want. Thank you
Okay.
for asking.
Any further questions? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Motion carries 5-0. The old business? Any board comment?
Just like to piggyback on what you said earlier about the food pantry.
Yeah, it was cold out there.
It was very cold, no question about it, but a lot of hard work by a lot of groups and people, and it's very nice to, aside from the service that the pantry provides, it's also nice to see an aesthetically pleasing building down there instead of having trailers.
Those trailers were a pain in the neck. Okay. Any other people have board comment? All right, let's move on to the informational items. Anybody have any questions on the informational items? I have one question on the Virginia retirement system. They say that our unfunded actuarial contribution went from 6.7 million down to 4.6 million. Yet the employer normal cost rate went from 7.16% up to 7.58%. Is there something I don't understand? I'm sure there is.
I don't have that answer at hand.
We got less unfunded liability, and yet I gotta contribute more.
I don't have that answer either, but I'll be glad to call my
Okay.
contact at DRS and get them to explain it.
Okay, all right. Just send me an email. Maybe the others are interested.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, even their letter is confusing about the numbers. I mean, it says we have a valuation of 10.14% of payroll, but yet the actuarial valuation is 11.35 for the years 15 and 16. I mean, how do they know that? How can they do an evaluation a year, in one case, over a year in advance, and the other one half a year in advance?
one of the there's a lot of interesting things in there when you go through there and look at the assumptions they make in terms of pay raises and for your retirees, et cetera, et cetera. It looks like cost of living increase is 2.5% compounded annually, and that's what they're basing everything on. Payroll growth rate of 3% per year. Just, it would just be interesting to understand some of their rationales for that.
Good luck.
Well, understanding what the, hearing what they say, not necessarily understanding.
Okay. I mean, I felt the same way reading some of it anyway.
Okay. Anything else on the information items? Okay, appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. Do we have any appointments to make?
Well, I would like to, get a draft choice or something from Mr. White, if at all possible. I'd just like to make that comment up front.
Be duly considered at some point in the future.
And an appointee to be named later.
That's right.
All right.
But I would like to suggest or recommend that appointment for the District 2 Youth Commission vacancy. Ms. Burleson.
Okay, anybody have appointments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Okay, next calendar. Any questions on the calendar?
Nope.
Okay. Making schedule here.
Good job.
Yeah.
Can I get the attorney to read our words so we can go into closed session?
Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Orange County desires to discuss in closed meeting the following: consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of public body, and consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. And whereas pursuant to section 2.23711A7 of the Code of Virginia, such discussions may occur in closed meeting. Now therefore be resolved on this 24th day of February 2015 that the Orange County Board of Supervisors does hereby authorize discussion of the aforesaid matters in closed meeting.
Okay, do I have such a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're in closed session. All right. All right.
To the best of your knowledge, were the only matters discussed in the closed meeting public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and that only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. Mr. Goodwin?
Aye.
Mr. White?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Frame?
Aye.
And Mr. Crozier?
Aye. Okay, next item is the request for tax exemption status. Who's presenting that?
Text. Oh, I am, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was looking at the tax.
You're looking at me, I was like,
There was a taxation ordinance, and I was.
yeah, that one's mine.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you recall, you authorized for a public hearing tonight the grant of tax exempt status to a parcel of land that Barbersville Baptist Church had acquired. Tax map number 54176 there's information concerning what this action would do. And let me get down here. What property, getting down here, the amount of the current tax rate for this piece of property is $404.41. And I think you all, after having the public hearing, take action to declare it exempt from real estate tax.
Okay. All right. Would the representative from the church like to make any statement?
Is there any need for me to make a statement? I mean, I'll be glad to tell y'all anything you want to know. My name is Roger Gibson, and I live at 4349 Constitution Highway, and I'm a trustee and a deacon at the church. This was the only way we had an opportunity to expand, was to purchase this piece of property, and we did that last fall. There was no house on the property that we had demolished, and went through the proper channels. I got my permits and stuff like that, and final inspection. So it should be, the only thing left to do now is for us to clean off the highway, the trees on the highway, and I have gotten permission from the highway department to do that. Other than that, we're just trying to make this piece of property more attractive for the people coming and going through the village of Barbersville. And it also gives us an opportunity to add maybe a shelter or some type of a structure there one day if we can afford it. Right now, we're working very hard to pay for the property, but we will enjoy it as soon as the weather gets a little warmer.
Okay. Roger, was there a well or septic on the property?
There is a well and a septic on the property.
What are your plans for particularly the septic, I guess? Are you gonna fill it in?
Well, if we should ever make the piece of property active again, we would probably go and reactivate the septic system. But if there was any updates or anything like that, we'd go through the proper channels for permits and stuff of that nature. The well on the property, it's actually two wells on the property. The one well is a 6-inch bored well, and the other is about a 24-inch bored well. But that was probably done by Mr. Gentry over in Louisa County back in the 70s. The newer looking well is looks it's a 6-inch drill well, and it's probably put in by either the Moores or the Charlottesville or Wilson or the Ruckersville. The wells, right now we do not plan on using either the septic system nor the wells, but they would be a good standby if we should find something that we could do with the property. The church owns a parsonage up the road a ways, and we do not plan on putting at this time any structure on there, but if it should be a structure of any type, it would be something that would be to benefit the church and not a residence. We do not want to put a residence back on it because it's a non-conforming lot. The only thing it did to us was it allows us to have more parking space and to beautify the area. Our next goal is the piece that joins this looks worse than what we thought.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions? All right, thank you. We can't hold the public hearing and actually open it until 7 o'clock, so we'll just sort of stand by here until 7 o'clock to formally open the public hearing.
Well, I don't quite understand how all the leaders of Orange County could be in one elevator with no security call.
That's why I took the stairs.
So what now?
That's why I took the
Oh,
stairs.
okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Figured it'd take 2 grenades.
Okay.
He was a designated member. In case we all the rest of us
Designated
went down,
survivor, huh?
he would still be here to, yeah.
Okay.
Nice looking fence, Roger. That's a nice looking fence.
Yeah, I worked real hard on it.
Yeah, I bet you did.
All right.
Well, you got 5 minutes if you have any questions for Josh on his ordinance.
Well, that's, we might as well do that. Josh?
We figured Roger's talking and take up at least 15 minutes.
Now come up and talk to us about the erosion and sediment control ordinance.
I'll keep my spiel short. If you recall, we went through 2 work sessions to formulate what this started out as. It's an amendment to one of our exemptions in our erosion and sediment control ordinance, basically, which is an extension of state code that says anything under 10,000 square feet of disturbance is exempt from E&S regulations. The way the county's been administering this previously was that anything in the towns and anything within a quote-unquote subdivision was essentially zero threshold. So if you built a small garage, for example, you'd have to get a E&S permit and post a bond. So this cleans that up. It also changes that threshold for the towns and any property zoned residential. It actually raises that threshold to 2,500 square feet, which we had discussed at a previous date. And it also does a number of other things. It basically just cleans up the language, adjusts some code references since the passing of the State Stormwater Control Act. There were some changes to how they categorize their regs at the state level. So this references those. It, and a lot of areas changes just based according to how we administer it. Again, just some cleanup language. And I believe that is it.
I have a question whenever you say.
Does anybody got questions for Josh?
I had one on the, section 2636C, you've added the new language that deals with utilities. Did the state code change give us some either authority or responsibilities over these electric utilities? I mean, I didn't know that we played that game at all.
Generally, we don't. That, I literally copied and pasted that out of state code. But, generally, like Dominion, for example, they'll file for typical work that they do, they have a set of specifications that guide how they do that, and they just refile those with the state every year. The only exception is if they don't do that, if there's some situation where they don't file those specs with the state every year, then our ENS code actually applies, so we can enforce it.
Right, they're exempt, but they have to take certain steps to be exempt, and if they don't take the proper steps to exempt out of our ENS, then they will have to comply with ours.
That's a much better way of saying it.
Well, I guess the language that hung me up a little bit was, the way I thought I read it was that Josh, or the zoning administrator at the time, has to make a determination. And I didn't know whether we were, in essence, volunteering to make that determination, where the state code requires us to be in a position of making that determination, or I mean, the language is preceding the section 2636 is the administrator, I assume that means the zoning administrator, shall be responsible for determining whether or not one of the exemptions apply. And it seems to me we probably have no role whatsoever, including making any kind of determination, typically. But maybe we do, if it's as you say that.
Which language are you looking at this
I'm at the top of page 5 of 9. I mean, I'm sorry, at the sentence just preceding 2636.
Right, and that sentence, that's actually for 2635, which is the state list of exemptions. There's a state list, and that determination is specific to 2635, which is the state exemption list.
Right.
2636 deals with this general erosion and sediment control permit that, for example, Dominion can file.
Right, but line 8 above there talks about the same thing. It's the natural gas and electric and so forth. Item 8 on that page 5 of 9, the way I read it deals with the same topic, which is the utilities. And
right, and it would be his job if the utility comes in and says, we've complied with state law and we don't have to comply. It is his job to go, yeah, that's right. I mean, somebody has to agree. I mean, somebody has to review that they have in fact.
So he does have a function.
A
that he has to-
perfunctory review, but I mean,
Yeah,
he doesn't
okay.
have any authority to override.
I just couldn't
Yeah,
tell how much of a hook that.
No, his statutory
puts us-
duty is to verify they did what they're supposed to do, to be properly exempt. So for them to be properly exempt, they have to comply with state regulations, and if they.
And he looks at their situation.
He looks at their,
it
and I
does or
think the
does not.
state, I don't know this for certain, but I think the state actually issues you the document that says you've properly filed, and so he would just verify that they are properly exempt.
Or I just check with DEQ.
Right.
If not, it's easy enough.
It's really his job is just to make sure that, verify that the utility, for example, has done what they're supposed to be doing, and not take it for granted that they did in fact comply with state law.
I guess my question was I didn't ask a good question. Do we need to even assert that responsibility? Can't we just say, it's a state problem, we're not involved? Maybe we don't have that option.
Well,
I don't
think,
I don't want to get in that fight if we don't have to.
well, I don't think it's a fight. It's just what we're doing. The state gives you certain exemptions if you're doing any of these things. You're
Right.
exempt. it's his job to verify any of the exemptions, to make sure it's a legitimate bona fide that you truly are following
Otherwise,
the
he
law.
needs to apply the rest of the ordinance.
Otherwise, he has to apply the rest of the ordinance. So he has a duty statutorily to verify that you are validly in one of these exemptions.
Yeah, okay. That was really my question, whether whether the code requires us to take on that.
We have a statutory duty to verify that you truly are exempt.
That's all,
Otherwise, I mean, he's got a job to make sure the ordinance is enforced.
Right.
And then he gets to decide to look whether they fall into exemption. Otherwise, he's, okay. Any other questions for Josh? All right, thank you, Josh. All right, now we're going to open the public hearing. The first public hearing is the request for tax exemption for property owned by the Barbersville Baptist Church. We'll open the public hearing. Do we have anybody signed up to speak?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Then we're going to close the public hearing.
Move we approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
I beat you in that time, too.
I knew you wanted that one, so I'll let you have it.
All right. Next, the proposed amendments on the erosion control and sediment control ordinance. Does anybody have any more questions for Josh? Okay, then we'll open the public hearing on the proposed amendments to the erosion and sediment control ordinance. Do we have anybody signed up to speak?
No, sir.
So moved.
Public hearing's closed.
second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next item is the proposed amendments to the taxation ordinance. All right, who's making the
Mr.
presentation?
Chairman,
on
this is
that?
mine. This was in consultation with the commissioner. What we discovered is we had a situation here in Orange where somebody had moved here, been living here for 2 years, and still was carrying plates, I think from Florida, which has no property taxes. And the commissioner did, like, what can I do? How do I force them? Well, there's a state law provision that allows us to adopt an ordinance that can, since we can't force somebody to retitle their car, we can initiate a penalty for not properly, because under Virginia law, you're supposed to title your car in Virginia in 30 days.
Okay,
Talked to the commissioner, she has no intention of going and hunting for these. It's simply, if somebody blatantly is violating the law and is brought to her attention is the only purpose for this.
all right. Any further questions for, okay. Then we'll open the public hearing on the proposed amendment to the taxation ordinance. Do you have any speakers signed up?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We have one speaker, Terry Lohr, 24073 Monrovia Road.
Okay,
How y'all doing this evening?
good.
We already have laws on the books that, there's state law that says you gotta change your tags within 30 days. Am I correct? If you move here? Are you saying that law enforcement refuses to enforce that law? My point I'm trying to make is, why do we need another law if the law's already on the books not being enforced? I mean, the sheriff's department, if it's a problem, it's a bigger problem as it may be, that's the job for law enforcement. I mean, if a man refuses to do it, you know, you write him a ticket for it. If he doesn't comply in a month or a couple of weeks or so, you write him another ticket for it. And so on, and so on. I mean, you know, if you enforce the rules on the books, you don't need this rule. That's just the point I'm trying to make. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, there's already laws on the books. If sheriff's department or whatever, town or whatever, if that's a problem, you know, you write the fellow a ticket. If he doesn't comply, you write him another ticket. And so on and so on. I mean, you know, I wouldn't think it would take very many tickets for somebody to comply. You know, it's somebody living here 2 years and not changing their tags over. I can't help but wonder, did he ever get a ticket? If the laws on the books are enforced, you don't have this problem. That's all I was trying to say.
Thank you. Any additional people?
No, sir.
Okay, we will close the public hearing. Do we have any comments or questions for the attorney?
Yes, isn't this more of a civil side to it?
Well, it's a civil side. What it does is it allows the commissioner who's responsible for collecting the taxes to actually have a vehicle right now, we can rely only on DMV. We can't, I mean, and we don't control DMV, and we can't make somebody write a ticket. We can't make DMV enforce their law against a particular person. What this does is gives our Commissioner of the Revenue a vehicle and a tool she can use to motivate somebody without having to go through DMV.
Okay. As I recall, part of the discussion to get to this point was that until a vehicle is registered, our Commissioner of Revenue cannot levy a property tax assessment.
Right, because she
So
didn't have
we're-
a record, it's not even in the DMV computer.
So it doesn't exist as far as she's concerned.
Right,
So
and why,
this-
that's why the General Assembly created this right that said, okay, if you're gonna game the system, we can't tax you, but we can hit you with $250 instead because you're trying to skirt the tax. So this legislation was created by the General Assembly to allow local governments, commissioners in particular, to deal with the people that don't get in a system, that refuse to make the change and aren't in the DMV system.
And if our local law enforcement would basically have to profile, which is illegal, in order to catch the people that are not properly tagged, is that correct?
One thing, our law enforcement is not empowered to, they would be hard pressed, and profiling may be the right word, they'd be hard pressed to validly write a ticket that they could win in court.
I mean, they'd find a car with the license out of plate. You don't know if the person's a resident or not.
Right, you don't know,
Well-
whereas the commissioner has records of home ownership and residency, the commissioner, and again, it's really, we're not gonna go hunt for anybody. The one that came to our attention was a landlord turned in their tenant. They said, this guy's been living here for 2 years and he's still riding Florida plates, you need to do something. Well, we didn't have a vehicle to do anything.
Okay.
And so that's what this is about.
Well, okay, but, you know, Speaker brought up the point that there, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that there is a state law that says you have to get Virginia plates if you live in Virginia.
Right, 30 days.
Okay. Who is responsible for enforcing that law?
The Department of Motor Vehicles, DMV.
How would they enforce it?
I don't know how they enforce that or if they enforce it. I mean, it's on the books, but I don't know how DMV enforces that. Because they don't have-
DMV is not a law enforcement agency. Why would it be their job to enforce
I'm
the
not,
law?
I don't know how, that's the whole point. That's what creates the problem, is there really isn't a useful enforcement mechanism. The police can, if the police officer knows for a fact you're driving on illegal tags, that you should be on Virginia tags, he can write you a ticket. But for most police officers, they don't know that, they aren't checking that, and they aren't interested in that, to be honest with you.
Well, what police officers are interested in is not really relevant.
Well,
I mean, the law is the law. So whether a policeman's interested in enforcing it or not is,
Right.
that's a problem between him and his superior, but, or her and her superior. But, I mean, I think it raises a good point. If we have a law on the books, then some law enforcement agency is responsible for enforcing it.
Well, we don't have a law on the books, the state of Virginia has a law on the books.
Well, I know, that's what we're talking about.
And the sheriff's department could write a ticket, but we don't have any influence there. The commissioner can't do anything. The commissioner can't motivate the sheriff's department to write a ticket.
Well, I don't understand why we're suggesting that the sheriff has to be motivated. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if you're, I mean, in this case, we had a landlord, but you're saying the commissioner has a way to find this out, because they would have to, you're saying they wouldn't go looking for it, but they kind of have to look for it in a way. They would have to do some cross-indexing.
The commissioner has a duty to collect taxes that are validly due in the county of Orange. One of the ways that you determine what taxes are validly due is when somebody registers the car with DMV, then, which you have to do within 30 days, then the commissioner gets a notice, and she then can send out that triggers her sending a property tax bill to that person. So it's a taxation issue for the commissioner. If the person doesn't go through the DMV channels, yes, there may be laws on the books that penalize you for not doing it, but it doesn't create in us still the ability to collect the tax that's validly due. What this does is it creates for the commissioner a vehicle for collecting a tax that somebody is skirting, irrespective of the DMV enforcement mechanism on the transfer of the title. Because understand, the reason people do this is to skirt taxes.
But
this is a taxation
But how's the
issue.
commissioner going to know? I mean, she can't just take some landlord's word for it.
If a landlord comes in and says, in fact, he brought the lease. He said, here's the lease, here's the person's lease. And what she can then do under this statute, She issues them a citation. We'll be in General District Court across the street in 30 days and then tell it to the judge. And that's how it actually plays out in real life, is she will send the citation, the violation citation for $250. We'll set a court date if you want to appeal it, and then we'll be across the street, and then you convince the judge you don't really live in that house. And that's how, practically speaking, how it
But from the standpoint, what you're saying, that a deputy could see a car with out-of-state license plate, and he knows the individual's living here, he could issue a
He
ticket.
could issue a ticket, but that doesn't change the fact that we still can't collect the taxes. If that person doesn't go register with DMV, they pay the
So,
ticket.
he gets a ticket and there's a fine for the ticket.
There's a fine for the ticket, but that doesn't change the fact that we still aren't able to collect the taxes on that car unless that ticket motivates him, which it may or may not. I don't know.
I think part of, with Florida is that because of the high military population, they're able to register their cars with no physical address. That DMV allows registration of vehicles without a physical address. And so it becomes a titling issue, and if they don't have to have a physical address in Florida, and they can still have a registered vehicle, they could live here in Orange County. I think other states require a physical address.
And we give a military exemption by law, by federal law, we're
Sure,
required to.
sure.
So, I mean, this
I mean, I
new
used that, I
ordinance,
kept my
yeah.
car registered in Michigan for 30 years while I was on active duty.
Right, so if you're on active duty, if you're in the military, this doesn't apply to you anyway. It's only for people who are not in the military that this would apply.
Is there any mechanism that routinely the sheriff's office or any other law enforcement would be made aware of a person that's been here more than 30 days and hasn't changed it? Because you wouldn't ordinarily know it.
There's no practical way for them to know it.
So
And
they
there's
can't, so they can't enforce it unless they happen to know
Personally-
the individual
Right.
or get a tip or.
Right.
So that,
Well, I mean, they would enforce it the same way they enforce a lot of other laws, which is by observation. If you see the same car, parked at the same residence with Illinois plates on it
Right.
for, 18 months, then that's probably a hint that maybe something is going on.
If they knew the guy, but the guy could be military. I mean, okay. Any further discussion?
the other thing that came to mind when I was reading this is, and I know this happens because there's a difference in inspection laws with regard to emissions and things like that. There are people with Virginia tags that live in a jurisdiction that requires an emissions inspection, a fairly elaborate one, but they decide to park their car in one that does not. I mean, this only applies to the state registration, I take it, not to, because we still, in a case like that, wouldn't necessarily be in a position to collect the personal property taxes, even if the vehicle were.
Well, but you gotta, when you register your vehicle in Virginia, you gotta list where it's garaged. You're paying you gotta pay that personal property tax somewhere, cause you're identifying the place of where you garage the vehicle, cause that's one of the questions, where is this vehicle garaged? And DMV sends that record to the
Well,
locality.
a lot of people register RVs in other areas that don't have much of an RV tax. And that's where they store them.
Well, and when they check that box and say where it's garaged, it doesn't necessarily mean they tell the truth.
No, well, cause they might pick a jurisdiction with lower property taxes. I mean, that happens all the time too.
Sure.
Or doesn't have to do the emissions.
Yeah,
because that
that's right.
Can be a very substantial cost.
Any further
Well,
discussion?
yeah, I mean, you know, I understand the rationale behind this, but I sort of feel like, you know, there's a skunk under my deck and somebody's handed me a wet noodle to run it out. I don't really think we're accomplishing anything by this, but if there's a chance that that a wet noodle might be helpful, then I guess.
It was just a tool the commissioner asked.
These
asked about.
people, wouldn't they also have an out-of-state license then? And if they have an out-of-state license, it raises the question of, even though they have a lease and they are living here, are they actually residents or are they?
Right, I mean, there are
I
people
mean,
who
he shows
live in
his,
more than one place.
he shows his license, which is only a year old, and him living in Ohio. And he doesn't ask him where he lives. I mean, that's not what what a deputy sees. He says, okay, you were speeding, you got a Ohio license plate, and you got an Ohio driver's license. You may even be living in town, but that doesn't trigger him to do anything.
And you
The only
guys
thing
can
is
defer
we're gonna-
this if you're not comfortable with it. I mean, again, it's not something that's
Right.
critical to anybody,
Yeah.
so nobody's really all that.
Well, I think to me, this is a situation where somebody's trying to avoid our taxes. And we have, and I don't like to impose additional taxes when somebody is trying to avoid them.
How detailed is the state code in prescribing when and under what circumstances and what means you I mean, is it?
What you got before you is pretty much cut and paste from the state code.
But, I mean, like Title 46.2, does it really go through all the possible things like Jim was talking about? You know, you keep a driver's license from someplace and a tag on a car from
No,
somewhere else.
It uses the word residence, reside, which there's been tons of litigation over residence.
So and that's well defined. I mean, there's not an issue with that, okay.
Because in the military context, you have the distinction between residence and domicile.
Right, right.
And so there's lots of litigation on what is a residence, what is your domicile, and they're not the same. And so
So if you meet one of the definitions of resident,
then you have to have Virginia
then
plates.
this applies.
Yeah.
I think the same is true with driver's licenses
Yes,
as well.
it
I don't
is.
know that they do that any more than.
Full-time
Exactly.
students also have this domicile versus.
Right, full-time students have a domicile issue as well, exactly.
I mean, I have a problem with the fact that you get taxed on vehicles that are not on the road and haven't been on the road for years. You may be saving them for a project. I have a problem with that, you know, we're being taxed for something else, but
That's a different ordinance.
It's a different ordinance, it's just, it does tend to go down the same.
Any further discussion? Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
What was the motion?
Motion to approve this ordinance change. Well, for discussion purposes, I will second it. Now, do we have any further discussion? Let's do a roll call, please.
Mr. Crozier,
Of course. Nay.
Mr. Frame,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Nay.
Mr. White,
Aye.
Mr. Goodwin.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-2.
Damn, we haven't done a 3-2 in a long time.
Yeah, that's
Different, that's unique.
Well, this is one of those, I'm not sure that.
Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
All right. Any more items before the business?
I think I'm just hearkening back to that last issue. You know, I suspect, I speak probably for Jim on this, it's just, I'm just not sure that this accomplished anything. And you know, I worry about adding some extra stuff. You know, it's not that I think that people who are here trying to skirt the taxes should get away with it. But
This might not be.
I'm just not sure this is what did it, so, but I understand why you guys voted for it, because, you know, it's,
Well,
so.
It's a tool that works.
I was just gonna say, I would like to, a year from now or something, you know, get some kind of report that says, we haven't applied it at all.
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't
Or-
surprise me that we haven't applied it.
Right,
So,
so
I mean, this is the first time it's come up from the Commissioner of Revenue, and she has no tools to enforce it against a specific individual. Now we have such a tool. And maybe somebody else. I would entertain another.
So moved.
yes.
Oops. And do I have a second?
Aye.
All in
They're all
favor,
over that
aye.
That's always a quick motion.